place here today. All right, welcome everybody to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. Hey, training camp has started. The rookies showed up last Thursday. The veterans show up this Thursday. First padded practice is this weekend. My son will be at training camp on Monday to go watch them in the heat. Although I passed by the camp the other day, they got tents set up with fans and all kinds of stuff. So you can be sitting in the shade. It's not too bad. And they have sold out. They don't really sell them, but they have a finite number of tickets. They have sold out every practice for every weekend that's open to the public. That's the only way they can get a good count of how people coming in. And also, they have enough seating for everybody. So it's really exciting. Saints training camp just getting started. I'm your host, Alan Orick, for another exciting episode of Under the Dome. I'm with my co-host, Sean Williams. I just want to give you guys a heads up. My Wi-Fi is not working. I have a portable Wi-Fi connection, so I'm just going to give you a heads up that we may have freezes, jumps, breaks. I don't know, but this is on AT&T. We talked to them already. My internet's out. My TV is out. All that stuff. You don't realize how wired your house is until you lose something. So um, I just want to give everybody a heads up just in case you wonder what's going on. Anyway, welcome again. How you doing tonight, Sean?
I'm doing great. Sun's finally gone down. Uh, we
I
we
knew
had
if we fooled around long enough, we'd get out.
we were dealing with a really bad glare over here a while ago. Uh, we want to thank everyone for joining us tonight on Under the Dome and invite you guys to subscribe to us on iTunes and on YouTube. And thank everyone for joining us once again. And I want personally take a real quick minute to wish a very happy birthday to probably the one person most responsible for Under the Dome being uh, built. And that's the Professor Nick Harrison. Today is his birthday, my brother from another mother. Uh, hope you had a great day. And more than that, I hope you're watching. But anyway, um, I hope everybody's doing great tonight. So, what do we talk about tonight?
Well, my suggestion was that we talk about every year, this time of the year, training camp starts up. We know about the stars. We know about Drew Brees. We know about Cam Jordan. We know about Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas. What the fans get excited about are not only the high draft picks, but also those undrafted free agents that seem to come out of nowhere that are the stars of camp, that Mr. August, um, guys who everybody, by the time training camp is over with, they've already got them in the Saints Hall of Fame. The argument is whether or not they're going to make the NFL Hall of Fame. It's those great underdog, never heard of the guy. Hey, I watched Caddyshack the other night on Netflix. Cinderella story, come out of nowhere. It's in the hole. It's in the hole. That's what they want. So you think about the Pierre Thomases, you think about um, Kari Robinson, Chris Ivory, even Lance Moore to an extent, because Lance Moore was an undrafted free agent. He signed right before um, Sean Payton and Drew Brees came aboard. He came in 2005. But, you think about those kind of guys who just the Saints fans just love him because he is that blue collar lunch pail. I'm going to beat a higher ranked player or a guy who got drafted and I didn't, a la Pierre Thomas versus Antonio Pittman. So my question to you tonight is, do you have a player in mind who would be your, uh, I guess, Cinderella kid to watch? Probably will make the roster and also have an impact this season.
About the best that I could come up with, to be totally honest with you, somebody that we drafted. but he was a later round draft pick.
Okay,
The kid
that'll
from
work. Mark.
the kid with all the names from Florida.
Oh, Chauncey Gardner Johnson.
Yeah. Uh, the only time you ever hear three names used is if you shot the president. But
You got in trouble with your mom.
yeah, yeah, that one too.
You got all three names called out.
Yeah,
Um,
I should have been really familiar with that one first.
yeah.
Because whenever it was David Sean Williams, stuff was about to get real.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but I think that even even coming to this team as a late round draft pick, he I believe that he has the skill set and will likely have the opportunity to be a full time contributor on that in that defensive secondary this year.
Well, and I agree with you. I think he is. We expect a lot out of him. Um, the question would be: does the seventh round or sixth round pick, the tight end from Notre Dame, does he have a chance to make an impact this season? I just want to make sure I say it, but he's named properly. But Ali's Mac, I think I said this right. Does he have a chance to have an impact this season? Not sure. They also got that kid Saquon Hampton from Rutgers. Um, they've got a lot of defensive backs. In fact, they were looking at somebody today because one of the undrafted free agent Cinderella kids ended up getting the book thrown at him. He has to spend 6 months in jail, Carl Ganderson. So they have a spot available because they put him on the failure to report non-football reserve list, which is basically a nice way of saying this dude's in jail, but we don't want to cut him yet. We'd like to hold on to his rights and see what we got. So because of that, they've got a guy, Deshaun Shed, which he was defensive back. He was injured often, but he came from the Seattle Seahawks. They are looking at maybe signing him. And that dude's name, I can just picture the headlines if he gets beat in a play. Somebody call Allstate. Deshaun Sheetshed just got burned. So I mean, you got one, huh? Took me a while to think of that one, but I had that one in mind.
Oh, okay.
Hey, we were talking last week about Chris Berman and all his nicknames. I mean, if somebody's last name is Shed, you're asking for it.
Oh yeah, yeah. You almost want to go through the process of changing your name before training camp.
Well, I'll tell you what, the kid, you remember that tight end for the Chicago Bears back in the 80s? I think his name was Brian Wetnight.
Yeah. Ryan.
I mean, Ryan.
Ryan.
Oh, well, regardless, his last name was Wetnight. Can you imagine what high school must have been like for this dude? I mean, he was everything from Wet Night, Wet Dream, the whole bit. He went through it all. You gotta think about those things. Name a kid.
Yeah.
So anyway, but I would think that my guess for the first Saints training camp, darling, has started already, and that's little Jordan Humphreys. You've got a lot of fans who want to see him make team. You've got people kind of penciling him in as the 5 or 6 receiver, possession receiver, red zone threat, all that stuff. You've got a lot of people who want to see that happen. So I think him, Divine Ozigbo, the running back from Nebraska, is another one to watch because we talked about the train battle. him and Wayne Washington, an interesting battle to see who's going to make the team. The only other one I can think of, and I had him earlier, and I can't remember his name now. He's a former first-round draft pick, I believe, of the Denver Broncos. He was a defensive tackle.
Yeah.
What is his name?
I forgot.
Come on, man. It's not Donnell Williams, is it?
I think so. I do believe that was the one.
I got my list out here. I'm looking at everybody's names. I don't see it on here, but I know it's not Kenny Bigelow. Hang on. Sylvester Williams. That's it. Sylvester Williams. I knew it would come to me, but I thought about it for a while. He was defensive tackle, drafted to the Broncos. He spent time with the Titans even. Let me just look him up real quick. Like I said, I'm sorry about this. With internet as spotty as it is, I've got to, let's see. I would normally have this already pulled up for you guys. I'm sorry about this. Okay, here's my roster. It is Sylvester Williams, and it's not a hyperlink. I know he was #1 draft pick of the Broncos. I do remember that. But anyway, he is another guy who is looking for a chance. There's an opening at defensive tackle because, as we all well know, Sheldon Rankins, in fact, has been put on the PUP list, not the injured reserve list, which recallable injured reserves. That's a good thing because with the PUP list, he can come back anytime, but normally they're out at least 6 weeks, and he has to be on the PUP list all of training camp, which he will be, obviously. So that gives them some flexibility. It's possible he comes back before the bye. I still think he comes back. They probably start practicing him the 2 weeks before the bye. He comes back a week after the bye, and they're ready to roll. So that's probably my three guys to watch this training camp to see who makes it and who has an impact. Last year, Taylor Stallworth made the team as an undrafted free agent. We've seen this team every year select undrafted guys to make the team over drafted players, sometimes over free agents they brought in. I think we'll continue to see that this year. I think Trey Hendrickson has an uphill battle to make this roster. He's a defensive end, the third-round draft choice, the final third-round draft choice of the legendary 2017 class. I don't know who's going to beat him out, though, because you've got Wes Horton, Geno Grissom, and Corbin. Oh, God, I'll ruin this name. Kaufusi, Kaufusi. Kaufusi? How do you say his name? What are you laughing at? How would you say the dude's name?
I got to tell you, man, Saturday made our 3-year anniversary, which we'll be celebrating next week. But
okay.
Some of my dearest memories of those 3 years is you reading names.
Butchering names? Yeah, butchering names. You know, I used to be a teacher, too. So you can imagine what that was like.
Oh, you took one for the team, brother. I wouldn't even have tried that name.
Well, you know what? I used to ask for a pronunciation guide next to it, like a media guide. Give me a pronunciation guide next to your name. That's the only way I can say it, because otherwise I'm going to butcher the hell out of it.
I remember
I used to
that I want to say in one of the programs that I have from the Superdome.
Yeah.
They had pronunciation.
They have a pronunciation. Yeah, they do. And anything the media has to use, because they do. They have to use these things. And I grew up my entire life people butchering my last name, so it doesn't even faze me. But some people get offended by
I
what
can
do you mean you
still
can't say my name?
remember asking you the first time, how do you pronounce your last name? And you said however you want to.
Yeah, I don't care. I mean, it's Ulrich. It's Ulrich, really, is what it says. But I just make it easy on people. Ulrich, just say
Yeah.
Ulrich, and you're good.
Yeah, the only
But
way I know it is that the Lars Ulrich, the drummer for Metallica.
there you go. There you go. Some kids used to ask me that too. You laid the laws, Ulrich? Yeah, I'm his poor brother. I mean,
And
I'm ready to skeet Ulrich too. That was the other one.
I remember
He's not.
in one of our chat rooms one time, I said, "What do you get when you cross Lars with Alan?" And everybody was like, "What?" And I said, "The drummer for Metallica," and nobody laughed.
No, they really don't. They I don't know. A lot of people. It's weird. A lot of people don't. I don't know if there's a generational thing going on, but a lot of people just don't know Metallica. I mean, they know of them, but they don't know them. So
Yeah,
they don't know the band members' names, that kind of stuff.
Lars,
All right.
James started with Cliff and then went to Jason, and
Who's
then
the lead singer?
James Hetfield.
Yes. Okay.
They've had a few different bass players because their original bassist Cliff Burton was killed in a bus accident in Europe. He was asleep in a bunk, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they hit a patch of dry ice or black ice, and the bus turned
Mhm.
over, and it ejected him from the window, and the bus landed on him, and it killed him. And after,
You're not. You're
huh?
not a rock band. You're not a rock band unless some tragic thing has happened to you.
Well, at least their drummer never exploded.
I mean, you got. Let's just start going through some of these bands. You know, uh, Led Zeppelin. We all know about John Bonham getting killed.
Keith
Uh,
Moon of the
the,
Who.
the Who, the Keith Moon. Yeah. Um, well, he didn't die, but the drummer for Def Leppard loses an arm.
Yeah.
The guitarist dies.
On
Um,
on my birthday,
yeah, the
Steve Clark.
guitarist for Chicago. Yeah, the guitarist he dies. Yeah, just go through Leonard Skinner.
Yeah.
The lead singer, one of the guitarists, one of the background vocalists, the producer, all killed in a plane crash. And then since that time, Alan Collins, King, you just go down the list. So yeah, it's and you got the whole the internet is spotty, and he's back. Are you? Did you hear me with the 27 Club? Do you know what that is?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm familiar with that. Um,
Yeah.
it,
Amy Winehouse is the latest member of the 27 Club that I can think of.
I,
Yeah,
Jane,
I mean, yeah,
Janie
Hendrix,
Lane for
Morrison.
he wasn't 27, but Janie Lane from Warrant died.
Dwayne Allman
Yeah,
from the Allman Brothers.
yep. Um,
You know,
and of course,
my daughter's really gotten into the Allman Brothers recently too.
if you want to talk about the generation that came after the '80s groups, the Seattle Sound, Chris Cornell, and those
Mm-hmm.
guys, and oh great, uh,
Kid from Metallica, not Metallica, from Nirvana,
Kurt Cobain.
Kurt Cobain. Yeah.
Um, it they're there for a long time, uh, and probably to a certain extent even still today, but especially in the decadent '80s. it wasn't just about playing music. It was about living a lifestyle, and
Oh yeah.
the lifestyle was very what's the good word to use? Counterproductive.
Yeah. Just pull up Bad Company Shooting Star. I mean,
Yeah,
that is the life of a rock star right there. You
exactly.
know. Um, so yeah, I mean that's your body cannot do these things, and you are going to burn yourself out, and that's usually what happens to the John Bonham, the Keith Moons, the even Janis Joplin. Uh, just you go down the list,
Yeah,
anybody you can think of. They destroy themselves. The one death that really upset me more than any other was when Stevie Ray Vaughan died in a
yeah.
helicopter
I
crash
remember that day.
because he had just gotten clean.
Yeah,
His album In Step, which I love, love, love that album, but his album In Step was won Grammys. He was turning his life around. He was getting right back to a clean and sober Stevie Ray Vaughan, and then he gets killed in that helicopter accident. So
Randy
that's
Rhoads,
a shame.
guitarist
Yeah,
for Ozzy Osbourne, probably one of
yeah,
the most influential heavy metal guitarists ever, and uh, his life, or well, his professional life was so brief. Uh, to
wasn't
make,
he in Quiet Riot too?
yep, he was the original
I
guitar
thought so.
player in Quiet Riot,
Yeah, that's what I thought.
and he
I could
left
picture it.
Quiet
I'm just
Riot
like, I
to
don't want to be crazy.
yeah, he left Quiet Riot to join Ozzy's band, if I remember that correctly. It's been a minute
Well,
since I've
I could picture the album cover with him and Ozzy on the cover. It was Ozzy Osbourne, Randy Rhoads,
tribute.
live. The
Tribute.
tribute. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. He there is some video footage of him like playing on late night TV shows, I think, but it's very very rare, and it took Ozzy a long, long, long time to come to terms with releasing the live stuff with him, the recordings, not the visual, but the audio recordings.
Right. It's just like I said, it's a you're not a rock star. I don't think until you've had tragedy. That's just the nature of the industry.
Yeah.
Why you have
Well, I mean, you cultivate this culture of live fast, die hard, uh, and the result is usually just exactly what you make it.
yeah, exactly. Veered off a little bit. We try to guys. We try to remember there was we didn't talk about last week with you guys. We wanted to carry it over this week, but I don't remember what the heck it was. Trying to listen to the last show to get to that point, and I kept backing it up and backing it up because I said I know we said it right before we went off the air, and I completely forgot about it. Sean, and okay, one of the things, and Sean, you're gonna have to talk about this now. One of the things we were talking about last week were the training camp battles. We mentioned um, quarterback last week. We mentioned wide receiver and defensive line. I believe we mentioned defensive line. Uh, what do you think about offensive line?
I think that this team is going to have to develop some sort of quality second tier, and by that I mean the quality that we have across the front in terms of starters is unbelievable. I mean, it goes without saying how great our starters are, but Tehran gets injured. Pete gets moved, and of course now Unger retires. What do we have behind them? That's what we're going to have to look at really hard and effort towards, in my opinion. Did I lose you?
Okay. Did I lose everybody? I hope not. Let's try this again.
Hey, hey.
Are we back?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you lose me? Did I like totally disappear? Or am I?
Well, you turned into a little circle of Drew Brees, and then all of a sudden it dropped me.
Yeah. Yeah. I was afraid of that. And um, all of a sudden, my internet connection just went, "You've lost your internet connection. Try again." So I had to reboot the whole damn thing all over again. So I apologize.
Oh, no,
So,
not a
God.
problem.
Okay. So, anyway, the question was before we got so rudely interrupted, um,
Not today,
the
ISIS.
training. Yeah, the training camp battle on the offensive line,
Yeah.
and you were talking about what do you see the big battles?
Obviously, I think it's going to be the biggest contested battle will be at center because with Unger retiring and the new guy from A&M, plus you've got the holding veterans in Cameron Tom and Will Clapp, and I think that's probably going to be a point of emphasis for this upcoming season,
Yeah.
and it's going to it's going to be very important for this team. I don't know how much of what I said a while ago that you got, but I'll just go back through it real quick. There's no denying how great an offensive line that we have as far as starters go. I mean,
Hmm.
they play great. But Tehran goes down, Unger retires, this happens, this happens. We need to work on the quality of play among the backups
Yeah.
because when this season turns into the long term or towards the end of the season, it's a marathon, not a sprint, as we say all the time. When it gets down to the games in November and the games in December, we're going to have people that are good to go, and we need that level on the backups to be to where we don't have to remanufacture a game plan because of one missing body.
Hmm. I've tried to make this argument before. A lot of people think that Easton is the replacement for Pete, and you can get rid of Pete. The problem we had last year wasn't Pete so much as it was the injuries. And I think that this training camp, we have to find three or four great, solid backups who are ready to be starters and arguably could be starters for another team. Um, because I think last year, when you hit that Dallas game and then those last games at the end of the season, and you got to the playoffs and you watched them play against the Eagles and then the Rams, the difference between the Eagles and the Rams in the postseason and the Eagles in the Rams regular season games was on the strength of that offensive line. Either game because he played the Eagles game at one hand. It wasn't that much better against against the Rams. But you had nothing behind him that you could really trust to start. That's why I think you brought an Easton in. Onstead was clearly not the same player he was prior to his pec injury versus the Cincinnati Bengals. So, you had that problem. I think Warford was even beat up. You saw Unger just crater by the time the playoffs rolled around. He looked terrible. So, that's all the things that we need to see this preseason, where you see a lot of the backups play a lot and get a lot of exposure so you can decide, okay, you know what? Cameron Thomas, my backup center, Will Clapp and Nick Easton, my backup guards. Maybe I even keep a guy at tackle, so I have 9 offensive lines instead of 8. Just so I have depth on this team.
Yes.
That's
quality
really something.
Depth.
And yes, quality depth. You don't have what's his name? He went to the Lions, and now he's with somebody else. Clemente. You don't have that Clemente you can go to that, you know what, we can put him at guard. We can put him at tackle. And we're not really struggling. For the playoffs and to get to the end of the season, you need to have guys who can play, because it's not a question of if Armstead and Pete get hurt. It's when they get hurt.
Yeah.
Because that's been their track record their whole career. So you need to have those quality depth guys.
And also it needs to be someone else. I'm not going to say besides Pete. It's going to have to be someone else along with Pete. Because, see, that to me, that is one of the problems that this team faces. Every time one of your mainline guys goes down, you're throwing Pete over there in that position, which you're adding mileage to those tires. And you move him everywhere, and you need him somewhere.
Well, I think they thought they put an end to that when they signed Bushrod back last year. But I think Bushrod's tires are practically bald. I think he was good for a game, maybe 2, but the longer he was out there, the worse he was. And I think he had a horrible game against the Cowboys. And I think that's where it started to show.
I've wondered ever since if the personal crisis that Bushrod was going through, if that had an effect on his play, which
it's possible
to me would be totally understandable. I mean, but up until then, let me rephrase that. After that, it
that happened early, though, in the season, unfortunately. That happened in the first couple of games of the season. I think the fact that he has not re-signed with anybody and he's even talking about retirement kind of shows you where he was physically. So I think that's an issue. I know one of the things I think we wanted to talk about was some of the defensive battles that we're going to have. Just like with the offensive line, I think the defensive line, we really don't need to see Cameron Jordan out there at all.
No.
Maybe play a little bit in game number 3, but other than that, I really don't want to see Cameron Jordan out there at all. I really don't want to see Davenport out there, only because you don't have much else behind him. You know he's going to be your starter. He does need the reps, but I'd play him a series in game 1, maybe a quarter in game 2, a half in game 3, then not at all in game 4. You got to get these other guys snaps. You got to get Hendrickson out there a lot. See it's worth anything. Some of these other guys, you need to get out there just to see who is going to be that other defensive end. I know their backup plan is always to have Mario Edwards play defensive end and defensive tackle, but in lieu of that, you still need somebody else out there because of injuries. You're going to have to get somebody. I don't know if they are going to be watching the waiver wire to pick up a veteran defensive end cheaply after the final cut down, because only one cut, remember, one cut at the end of the fourth preseason game. I don't know. Linebacker battles, I'm not really that interested in. I think you're pretty much set with Davis, with Anzalone, and with and Robertson. You can play all three. I know some people want to push Klein out the door. I don't think that happens yet. I think the rest of the guys are back in the special team spots. It's your back end, your secondary. Where is the battle going to take place?
Yeah.
Your favorite cornerback, PJ Williams, against P. Rob, and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Throw him in the mix for right there.
I would think that he is already better than PJ. PJ, no, I don't. I'm not a great fan of his, but last week, to show the level of self-abuse that I'm into, last week, one night while I was working, they showed a replay of the NFC Championship game. And
I can't watch that. I cannot watch that.
I watched the first three quarters. I wouldn't watch the fourth quarter. But I watched the play of some of those guys. And also, a few nights before that, they showed the Philadelphia playoff game. And that game, PJ played really, really well. He plays well in spurts. And unfortunately, for the position that he plays, that will only get you beat.
Yeah.
You don't have to be great, but you definitely have to be consistent.
I mean, I think Saints brass knows this. They have brought in more defensive backs this offseason than I think they ever have. You have Apple and you have Lattimore on the outside. And after that, it's kind of a free-for-all.
Well,
you would think.
Let me ask you this, if I may interrupt you for a second.
No, go ahead.
Is it has it been resolved yet that we even got Apple back?
Well, no. What did you make up his fifth-year option?
So we still have him under contract.
You know what that means? You understand? Yeah, he's still under contract. He's still working on his rookie deal. We just didn't want to pay him $14 million next year. So he is going to be a free agent next year.
Okay.
But he is under contract this year. So the thinking with Apple is he's playing for a new deal. And I think it's a motivational tool for him that, hey, you've got to prove to us for 16 games you are a starting NFL corner who can make plays for us. Otherwise, we're going to move on and try and find somebody else. And bringing in all these defensive backs is a good example of that. I think Ken Crawley's, the handwriting's on the wall for him.
Yes.
He can only play the outside. He cannot play the nickel or dime position. And he's not very good on the outside. He's regressed, obviously, from 2017. That's why they made the move to get Apple. So I think the defensive backfield battles will be interesting because you also have a lot of guys. If you're not starting, you play special teams. And with the way the rule changes have happened with kickoffs and punt returns, they've used a lot more defensive backs now than they ever have before. which I think is part of the reason why you could see as many as 10 or 11 defensive backs make the final roster. So that's the other reason why I think, the Saints are really looking for defensive linemen who can play tackle and end. So they, excuse me, so they keep fewer defensive linemen and they keep more defensive backs. Because it's 53. It's how you're going to divide the 53.
Yeah.
And you got 3 quarterbacks. So 3 quarterbacks and 3 specialists. That's 6 spots already. Now the rest of the roster, you got to figure out how you're going to do that. We're talking about keeping 9 offensive linemen. And I'm just throwing these numbers out there. Do we cut back on the number of wide receivers now? Do we keep 5 receivers instead of 6? How many tight ends do you keep? We've been sticking 3. Are we going to keep 3 the whole time? And I think that's what the real in the roster, how he builds his roster.
I think there's
I'm
sorry. There's 2 other spots. There's one. Well, actually, there's one other spot that I'm really curious to see how it plays out in camp, and that is in the return specialist. Because every time that Sean Payton gets fed up during the course of the season with a position, he starts immediately after the season. He starts stockpiling talent at that position, and if you think about it, that's exactly what he's done with the return position. Tommy Lee Lewis. Tommy Lee Jones sure wouldn't make a very good kick returner, I don't think.
I just watched Captain America again, so it's I got to get a big kick out of Tommy Lee Jones in that movie.
Tommy Lee Lewis, he hasn't developed into that dynamic returner that we thought he would be.
No.
There again, he's had bright moments, but the bigger picture, the body of work, it isn't there. And like you said, when you're sitting there playing Tetris with these positions, trying to figure out which shapes go where, you run out of spots a lot quicker than you run out of bodies.
Yep, absolutely. And I do think we go heavier in certain positions, heavier than we have in the past. And that creates a problem as far as getting your numbers right. Even your final 53 that you get at the end of training camp, that's not going to be set in stone. You will constantly see changes. People laughed about poor JT Barrett last year in the practice squad. He's cut, he's re-signed. He's cut, he's re-signed. Because they had to make room on the practice squad and the active roster to fit these players. They were pulling in, kicking down, pulling up, just so they could have enough bodies to practice. We used to not pay attention to these things because there was no such thing as social media. These used to be announced in the back of the newspaper with a 6-point font, real small, action or movement, and we just never noticed before. Now it's all social media. People are trying to read more things into this than they should. It's you've got to play these numbers because you have to have enough bodies to practice, and if you have 6 or 7 guys being held out of practice because of injuries, you don't know if they're going to play Sunday. You got to have bodies in the building practicing the game plan, so if you need them, they can practice. They can play on Sunday. Well, you can't just bring them in and then let them go again. You have to make roster moves, so you're constantly at that 53 number. Otherwise, teams will be doing that all day long. We'll have 70 guys in for practice. We'll let them all go right before Sunday, so we're back to 53. No. It's not how it works. You can't do that. Otherwise, Bill Belichick would be a master at hoarding players and stuff. No, it's so everybody has a free shot at getting guys in. So the Saints will release players that they know will not be signed by anybody else. And that's how come JT Barrett was the sucker last year. 2 years ago, it was that offensive tackle. What was his name now? That guy that they were constantly signing and re-signing. Was that God? Did you have a problem over there?
No, that was a Harley from next door.
Nice.
Yeah, and he'll leave the little restaurant next door and drive one block down there to the bar, and I think he tries to get all four gears on the way.
Is it a fat boy? Is that what he's got?
To be honest, I'm not sure. I just know that it sounds like the thunder of God when he comes through.
It's probably a fat boy. Anyway, so that's why they play these roster games constantly, and that's what makes it hard to figure out who the Saints' final 53 are going to be. You know at least who the top, say, 40 positions are, but it's 40 to 41 to 53. We don't know yet, and that's where all the battles are going to take place. How do you see tight end position out? What do you see? Do you see any changes in that?
Tight end is going to be really kind of weird. I mean, like you said, some of the other positions I see the numbers moving, like more linemen, less, and it just depends on the adaptability of Jared Cook, I think, and there'll probably be a backup to him, but then you're going to see, I would imagine, probably one of those, I don't know the term to use, one of those multi-purpose guys. If you're going to need a backup to the backup, then you're going to see one of those guys like a H-back or somebody that can play multiple positions falling into that role.
I'm glad you brought that up because I'm going to do a dummy, my prediction right before I'm going to post that probably Thursday or Friday online, but my prediction of the final 53 before training camp even starts. And because I can envision them keep 9 offensive linemen instead of 8, I'm going to go with 2 tight ends. I'm going to go with Cook, and I'm going to go with Hill, okay? So you got 2 tight ends making the roster with Zach Line being your 8-back kind of guy who can go in motion and be a tight end. But because I've got 9 offensive linemen, one of those guys is going to be my 3rd tight end in short yardage situations, active on game day as your 3rd tight end, the blocking tight end. And it'll just be, remember with old Zach Streif, 67's reporting as tackle eligible, that's what you're going to probably see. I would not be surprised by that at all. And that's just one of my feelings that I have because 5 receivers is tough. I can imagine them keeping only 5 because we usually have 4 active on game days, sometimes 5. If the kick returner ends up being who we think it's going to be, the cornerback we got from the Vikings, Shrells, I think his name is. Yeah. If he ends up being the kick returner, then you can go 4 active wide receivers with the 5th guy being inactive. And Kamara could play wide receiver if he had to. If he has to go in motion lineup, we've already seen him split out wide. Of course, Taysom Hill will be able to do that kind of stuff too. Yeah. Taysom Hill gets to play H-back sometimes. So that's all those things come into play. So that's why I think it's possible for us just to have 2 tight ends, especially if Cook ends up being a tight end that's capable of blocking, not just a pass receiving tight end. How about receivers? I know we talked about this last time, But who? I don't know if I remember. I don't remember if I asked you your opinion on receivers. Who? How do you see the core shaking out?
Well, obviously, you're going to have your Michael Thomas, and that's going to be number one. A lot of it is going
Mhm.
to depend on when we're able to see just exactly what Den has left. Um, I don't. I have absolutely no level of expectation that he's even the same player that he was 2 seasons ago. Um, but he may surprise me. Got one coming in that I've heard good things about. Hanson, uh, Chad
Mm-hmm.
Hanson, I think. But there again, just like we've said about the other positions, what we have to get done is for there not to be such a drastic drop off in quality from tier one to tier two. And we need each of the positions to be solid. We need that downfield
Yeah.
threat to keep the respect on the long ball. You need Thomas to be Thomas. In my opinion, the very best in the league, bar none. Uh, but last year we really didn't have that possession receiver, unless you want to count Alvin Kamara. And sooner or later, it's going to reach the point where you're asking Kamara to do too many things because you have no other choice.
Right. I think the big battle, of course, will be what does Cameron have? What does he show you in camp? If he starts out again, he has and he doesn't produce the Saints cutting. Um, but he's got to show that he can play the slot and be that big physical guy in the slot who can also get separation because we already know Traquan Smith and Keith Kirkwood, those are two guys that Peyton likes. They want to see growth out of those two guys. So Cam Meredith is really in a fight for a roster spot. Um,
Absolutely.
I don't see I don't see Ted Ginn getting supplanted by anybody, but if he gets hurt, it presents a huge problem because they have not upgraded the position. Um, Lil Jordan Humphreys has to be a training camp star to make this roster. He really does. He doesn't offer much more than what the other four guys ahead of him do. They can all do what he does, but better. And I'm talking about Kirkwood. I'm talking about Smith. I'm talking about Meredith and Ginn. Um,
Well,
he
really
has
and
to
truly,
outplay those guys.
if you think about it, I've noticed a trend over the past several seasons. These young receivers come in here, and I've heard comments made before about how very, very complex Sean Payton's offense is. And
You,
uh, I'm sorry. Anyway, how complex Sean Payton's offense is, and over the past couple of seasons, you've seen the Traquan Smiths and the Kirkwoods and the Tommy Lee Lewis's. You've seen them all come in, and they're not able to jump right in and thrive. And I'm just curious if that's a factor in it.
well, Peyton definitely demands that the receivers be able to play all positions on the offense, all receiver positions. You're not just the X receiver. You got to be the X, the Y, and the Z. You got in the slot. You have to play on the outside, the numbers. You have to do it all because Peyton wants the same formations out there with multiple people in them. That way, there's no cue for the defense to play off. You don't know what they're going to run. They could run anything out of this formation because they can't sit there and say, okay, if Thomas lines out wide, he's probably going to run these three routes from that position. He can't do that. He can run right, and they might that when he shifts over into motion, drops the slot. You saw times on Peyton would do this when Darren's on team, moves into the slot to up with the slowest cornerback on the field. And he knows all linebacker, and he knows Peyton knows he's going to win that matchup every time. And you hear on the NFL, we got the matchup we want, the look we wanted. Let's run this, and they're going to do it, and it's executed perfectly. But it requires the receiver to be able to run every single route in every single formation Sean Payton has come up with. And that is not easy to do. It's a lot of practice for young receivers to learn that.
Yeah.
So that is a factor.
Well, thank you guys for joining us. It's time for me to make the donuts.
Yep.
All right. We want to thank everyone. Yes, sir.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
We want to thank everyone for joining us tonight, and invite everyone to subscribe to our show on iTunes and on YouTube. And thank you so much for being a part of what we do. And next week, we're still in the planning stages of it, but our big 3rd year anniversary. 3 years y'all have been listening to Alan. And
I'm so sorry.
and listening to me agree with Alan.
Yeah, we gotta get down here. Someone to argue with me.
Oh, by the way,
I can think of a few.
I'll tell you when we get off the air, but someone told me to tell you that he loved you.
That he loved me?
Yeah.
I love you, man.
Yeah, it was.
All right.
It was.
Okay.
I'll tell you in a minute.
All right. I can wait.
Anyway, thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you again next Tuesday. And with that, I throw it to my partner in crime, Alan Ulrich.
Hey, we only have one dropout tonight. We had a couple, but for the that we had the issues we had. We actually have real training camp news. I know Michael Thomas's contract talk is still out there. Hopefully that gets by Friday. I'm hoping that they do this right before training camp really starts, get that knocked out, all good. We don't have to worry about any of that stuff. But yeah, first padded practice, I believe, is Saturday. Again, all the weekend tickets have been sold out. In other words, they've maxed out the capacity of people that can go out there and watch those practices. The only practices that are ever open are the ones that are in outside, not in the training facility, because they have no way of seating people safely inside the indoor practice facility. So if it rains, practice is canceled. They might be able to squeeze you into another one, but you may have missed your shot now because the weekends are all sold out. But we will talk about what happened in training camp. Social media helps out. We'll talk about any of the battles, any of the rosters moves they make, because they will continue making roster moves all throughout camp. And hey, football season's upon us now. With the off season's over with. Thank you guys for joining us again. We'll see you next time Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.